should not have executive powers anymore. I'm not saying we're not in a very important stage. I'm not saying anything bad about the pandemic, like it's not real. What I'm saying is it's been 2+ years. If anything needs to be done, it can be done through law. To my knowledge, in 2+ years, we have not seen one piece of legislation in any state or federal level on the pandemic. If it's such an emergency in 2 years, why do we not have any legislation? It's time to stop. That's what the People Convoy was, copying what they did in Canada with the Freedom Convoy. The only thing that the People Convoy in DC, notice it wasn't covered, wanted was executive powers gone. That's what we want. This is why. You could also call this the Shanghai Bill. Basically, it lets them do everything you saw in Shanghai. What is good, Osiris here, stuck in the middle. I don't know if people might remember, I talked about this late last year. There was this New York bill that I labeled as a concentration camp bill. Now, keep in mind, I don't know why this is so difficult, but some people don't understand the difference. A concentration camp is not the same as a death camp. What we're saying is, or what I'm saying is, the bill allows the government to concentrate people against their will. That's all it means. Now, those can turn into death camps, but that's not what I'm alleging here. Those are two separate things. It looks like they pulled it off. Let me start off with the bill, because I only did one video on it, didn't talk about it that much. This bill in New York, on January 5th, they voted on the bill. It did not pass. But if it would have passed, I'm going to show you how they did get it done in a different way. If passed into law, it would have granted permissions to remove and detain cases, contacts, carriers, or anyone suspected. Very general. And I did read through this bill last year, and this is accurate from what I read. Anyone suspected, this is like Shanghai, suspected of presenting a significant threat to public health. In New York, racism is a public health concern. This is very general stuff. This is a little bit more general than the regulation, I think, through the public health department, but this is serious stuff. And New York is like our capital. I mean, it's a big state, but I think New York is like is the real capital of the country. And remove people from public life on an indefinite basis. Bill A, if you don't believe me, Google it. This is a bill that did not pass. Bill A as in Apple 416 presents a serious risk to the basic liberties of all Americans in the state of New York, and I would say all Americans everywhere. The state of New York is just representative of what the cabal, Democrats, and GOP would want to do on a federal level. There's nothing about this bill that Joe Biden would disagree with. It poses a serious risk to the basic liberties of all Americans and everybody in the country, including their right to choose whether or not to receive medical treatment, including that V for vendetta related to thus far undetermined contagious diseases. The common cold is a contagious disease, technically. These bills don't define this stuff. Not very well. It's very general. And I will leave an open invitation to be corrected if I am wrong. I'm going to show you how I don't know what it means, but I did to the New York Health Public Health Department. I did to Kathy Hochul. I did to the Public Health Commissioner in New York, and it won't get to them, but I just want to make sure it's clear. I've looked through that bill, this regulation, and I want to know where I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm being an alarmist here. So what they did is that bill didn't pass. They tried to pass this bill that basically I'm calling a concentration camp bill since 2015, 2015. It's failed. People don't want to put their name on a vote like that. They might want the bill, but they're not going to put their name on it. So why not bypass the legislative branch? And that's what's happened. As of 4/22, there is now a public health regulation in New York. This is active currently. This is currently active in New York right now as we speak. They bypassed the legislative process by invoking Section 225 of the New York State Public Health Law, which came through, wait for it, emergency executive powers in 2020. I'll get to that more, but there are people who are bringing attention to this. Support those people. Allison Royal TV on Rumble. Follow me on Twitter. You'll be able to find this thread. And then also a lawyer, Bobbie Ann Cox. Let's see what Bobbie Ann has to say. If you don't take, I'm just some dude in my basement. Don't take my word for it. Maybe she's wrong too, but at least I'm going to give you a couple other opinions.
My understanding of this bill is that they can force you into complying with quarantine regulations if you have any communicable disease. It's very vague. Can you walk me through it?
Sure. So I want to make clear that it's actually not a proposed law. So it's not a bill.
That's why the Freedom Convoy was in Canada with the truckers. The People Convoy was in the United States. And the only goal that I'm aware of for the People's Convoy, which is still going on right now, to no coverage, that should be a red flag that no one's covering this. They're not in D.C. anymore, I don't think. They blocked them out of D.C. No coverage at all from major media. Their only goal was to stop executive orders. This isn't a bill in New York. That's what Bobbie Ann Cox is saying. Well, whoa, hold up. It's not a bill. Nobody voted on it. It's through the public health department. And what that is a cover for the governor. If the governor said, nah, I'm not listening to the public health, then the public health department reports to the governor. They're not a separate branch of government. They're in the executive branch, no different than the CDC.
It is a regulation, which means that it was passed through an agency. And in this case, that's the Department of Health. So that's part of the problem, because the premise of the lawsuit is that an agency, in this case, the Department of Health here in New York State, doesn't have the power to make a regulation like this.
So they're playing games. We are seeing it at the federal level also. We should be concerned watching this in New York. Any citizen should be concerned. The executive branch, Governor Hochul, is playing games, bypassing the legislative branch under the guise of emergency powers. What emergency are we in? I'm not saying that we shouldn't be on alert, be safe, listen to your doctor. Of course, all that. We're not in emergency, though. This is still under pandemic emergency. It's what she's claiming, the governor's claiming. So she said, I'm going to do it because the judicial branch is the only thing that really can check her at this point. It takes money. So this lawyer, Bobbie Ann Cox, is suing. She needs donations, money. That's a call to action. I don't know her personally, but on this level, we align. So I would consider donating to her or whatever, but they have to fund stuff like this. It takes money and then it takes time. But the judicial branch is the last branch of savior in many places. And it's no accident that they're going out to the homes of the Supreme Court justices on the leaked opinion on abortion, going against Roe v. Wade, leaving it up to the states. What it's really about is attacking the judicial branch, and they don't want power with the states. So if they attack the judicial branch, then they've got it all. That's what packing the courts would be. Packing the courts would be, hey, let's get a bunch of other judges on there. Let's get 15 judges, and then we name them, and the liberal judges win, and then before you know it, you have no rights unless you bend the knee. Oh, and then if you don't bend the knee, you might have a contagious disease. Come on out of your home. Come here. Mortal Kombat. That's why I'm concerned about this. The regulation grants the New York Commissioner of Health the power to choose who gets quarantined. This could be in your home. What's the difference between that and a house arrest? Basically a house arrest or in a facility. The current commissioner, if I am wrong, I will be happy to say I was wrong. I read this whole regulation. It was just, I have a link right here to it. I might do a separate video to break it down. That'd be as boring as this video is. That one would be like watching paint dry. But the current commissioner is Dr. Mary T. Bassett, and I have an open invitation to correct me where I'm wrong. Where Allison, I got this from Allison Royal, so correct her, me, Bobbie Ann Cox, where we're wrong. Let's hear more from Bobbie Ann Cox, who really breaks it down. She is a lawyer, so you don't have to believe a dude in his basement.
So the regulation itself, the title is Isolation and Quarantine Procedures. It's 10 NYCRR 2.13. And what it says is it gives the Commissioner of Health here in New York State the power to pick and choose who should isolate or quarantine. Now that could be in your home, or that could be they take you from your home and they force you to go to some sort of a facility, a detention center, a facility, whatever you want to call it.
I read this regulation again, and I agree with the interpretation. I'm not a lawyer, but I agree. It's very vague because they left it open to say, in my opinion, if you got in contact with someone, we could bring you in. You don't have to test positive for whatever it is we're doing. So the New York Health Department, the state health department, decides how long you stay in the facility. They don't have to provide proof you have a disease. Governor Kathy Hochul, please respond to, not me. I mean, no one's going to watch this except for you smart, and very grateful for anybody who watches it. But, in the grand scheme of the world, no one's covering this. So someone get her to respond to this for me.
The Department of Health gets to decide how long you stay there. And they don't even have to prove that you actually have a communicable disease. The language is very broad, so they could just think you might possibly have been exposed to a communicable disease, and they could say, okay, come with us. And they take you, they put you into a facility. You don't have a say as to where you go, how long you stay there. There's no way to, prove, hey, look, I don't even have a communicable disease. That there's no escape clause like that put into this regulation. It's completely, it's mind-boggling how much power they've given themselves in this regulation.
The next piece I want to go over is that this is a consequence of giving Andrew Cuomo executive power in the March of 2020. And I actually was blue-pilled at the time. I went to Andrew Cuomo for my updates. I thought he was doing a great job on updates. I didn't know about the nursing homes. I didn't know about the senior facilities. And I feel real stupid now. On the federal level, Joe Biden still has executive powers. Why does he have those? Why do any governors of any state still have executive powers? It must be stopped. And if you need to go through the judicial branch to strip them of their powers, you've got to start that now. Because how long does it take? How much money does it take? The legislative branches are obviously largely complicit, because if the legislative branches in the states and the federal level really cared, they would be like, President Biden, there is no way in hell you need emergency powers right now. They're all covering themselves. The legislative branch is covering themselves, saying, hey, it's the executive powers of the president. Then the president's like, oh, hey, I got to listen to the health officials. No, you don't. They report to you. They can give you, just like a doctor. A doctor can't make you do anything. The doctor can say, McDonald's isn't healthy for you. You might want to cut it out. And you might say, hey, while I have this time on the earth, I'm going to enjoy my nasty McDonald's burger. And that's your prerogative. It should be. We're at that point where we're starting to lose our prerogatives.
He was the governor in March of 2020 when the coronavirus pandemic started in New York. And at that time, March of 2020, the New York State Legislature gave him this incredible lawmaking power. They said, okay, it's a crisis. We don't know what's going on. We've never seen this before. We're going to give you the power to make, they called them directives, but they were really laws, mandates, whatever you want to call them. So he turned around, Governor Cuomo turned around and gave that power to the head of the Department of Health. And he said, in essence, do whatever you need to do, let's stop this thing from spreading and hurting people. So the regulation was actually first promulgated in March of 2020 under Andrew Cuomo and his Department of Health. However, that was an emergency where the legislature actually passed a law to give him this power. They then took it back. So a year later, in March of 2021, they said, okay, there's no need for you to have all this power, right? It's no longer an emergency.
So they gave him the emergency powers, they took it back, but the precedent was already set. And once one executive sees what another executive was able to do, I want that too. That brings in Governor Kathy Hochul.
Like it was in March of 2020. So they revoked the power. And then about 2 months later, 3 months later, Cuomo came out and said, okay, there's no more coronavirus pandemic in New York. It's not an emergency anymore. And so he withdrew all his prior executive orders, including the one that gave that power to the Department of Health. So the Department of Health lost the power to make that regulation. One, when
just to be clear, they should have never had the power.
Cuomo lost his power in March of 2021. But two, when in June of 2021, Cuomo revoked the power anyway. So now here we are a year later, and the Department of Health
And the only reason they revoked the power was Cuomo was undergoing a scandal, in my opinion.
a new governor is still making the same exact regulation. I mean, it's word for word the same. But where is their power coming from? That the legislature didn't give that special power to Governor Hochul. So
Hochul knows she doesn't have the power. The legislative branch knows she shouldn't have the power. And they're like, the judicial branch is very slow. It takes a lot of time. Maybe they won't get it done. By then, who knows what we can do? Go fall back on them.
there's no justification for them to have this regulation, which is the same exact regulation that was under Cuomo when he did have that special temporary power. So it's a really clear instance of the executive branch doing something they shouldn't be doing. And I don't know if their attitude is, hey, try and stop us. I mean, I'm really not sure what their attitude is about this, but it's very clear that at this point we need the court to step in and to say, sorry, you can't do this. This is illegal, unconstitutional. You don't have the power to do this.
Here, I'm going to end with this. All executives must lose their powers. And no one's going to take them away other than us, the people. I'm talking about through the political process. I want to make sure that that's clear. There is no other way. Through the political process, governors like Newsom in California should not have executive powers anymore. I'm not saying we're not in a very important stage. I'm not saying anything bad about the pandemic, like it's not real. What I'm saying is it's been 2+ years. If anything needs to be done, it can be done through law. To my knowledge, in 2+ years, we have not seen one piece of legislation in any state or federal level on the pandemic. If it's such an emergency in 2 years, why do we not have any legislation? It's time to stop. That's what the People Convoy was, copying what they did in Canada with the Freedom Convoy. The only thing that the People Convoy in DC, notice it wasn't covered, wanted was executive power is gone. That's what we want. This is why. You could also call this the Shanghai Bill. Basically, it lets them do everything you saw in Shanghai. You were in an apartment complex. You might want to consider that as midterms are coming up. You might want to consider that. In Shanghai, they said, you're in an apartment complex. We think that there's stuff going on. We tested a couple people with the anal probes, and we found out that they were positive. So you're going to have to stay in your apartment complex until we tell you to. That's what this bill does, or this regulation does. I might do a separate video on it. I think it to be thorough. To show my interpretation that I've done the work to look through it myself. But at the end of the day, visit, this is unitingnys.com. I have the website here. Sub to Allison Royal TV. That's who I got these clips from. Props to her. I don't know her. I don't know Bobbie Ann Cox either. Right now we align though. Props to State Senator Borrello, others, Lawler for NY, Chris W.C. Tague, Bobbie Ann, like I said, Bobbie Ann Flower Cox for fighting this. These are the people you might have to support, rally around, get the information for, to prevent us from becoming Shanghai. Let me know what you think. I'm going to leave with a clip. Take care.
Before it gets out of hand. I mean, look at what's going on in China right now. You know, you see on the news these videos of these, I mean, what do you call them? Camps, facilities, detention centers, one after the other, after the other, after the other. And they're doing this. They're taking people, they're saying, oh, well, we think maybe you're sick, you know, and they're throwing them in there. This regulation allows the New York State Department of Health to do the same exact thing.